songs were suggested by him, and yes, I did have, my opinion did matter at that.
They made timeless love songs, but behind the scenes, love had nothing to do with it. This is the story of Atlantic Starr, how a group built on harmony fell apart in silence. Egos, money, power plays, and the women who paid the price. Let's get into it. They started off as high school kids with nothing but big dreams and band practice after class, and somehow ended up in the middle of one of the messiest, most iconic R&B stories out there. Before they blew up, they were just some teens from Hartsdale, New York. Three brothers, David, Jonathan, and Wayne Lewis, each had their own little band going. Eventually, they squashed the sibling competition and merged everything into one group. They called it Nubin and even managed to drop 2 albums. But let's be real, barely anyone heard those. Still, you could hear the early signs of what they were cooking. Tight, polished, and smoother than it had any right to be for some kids still figuring it out. Then they packed their bags and dipped to LA. That's where things got interesting. During a random club set, they caught the attention of some major label heads. The label loved what they were hearing, but hated the name, so they gave them a new one, Atlantic Starr. It had that "we're going places" kind of ring to it. Their first album didn't exactly blow the doors off, but it set the tone. They were doing something different, a big band with everything: horns, congas, guy-girl vocals, and live musicians who knew what they were doing. 9 members deep, they weren't just out here chasing fame. They were building a sound.
Of Cliff Archer, bass, David Lewis, guitar, Wayne Lewis on keyboards and vocals, Porter Carroll.
As the years rolled by, they started to carve out their space. Songs hit the airwaves, fans started to notice, and Sharon Bryant's vocals, crazy. The Lewis brothers were slowly becoming a real songwriting force, and their tracks were getting slicker with each drop. But for all that chemistry in the studio, the energy backstage was a whole different story. Everything looked perfect on the outside, but the cracks were already starting to show.
So is it fun being around all these men?
Love it, love it, love it. They're all my big brothers, though.
How long have you been together?
Well, as Atlantic Starr, 2.5 years.
By the time they dropped their 6th album, things inside Atlantic Starr were starting to get weird. Wayne and David had slowly taken over the wheel, writing more, calling shots, and stacking up those songwriting checks. And with every new credit, their names got bigger. So did the pay gap. It wasn't the same crew energy anymore. The whole group used to move like a unit, but now it felt like there were levels. If you weren't writing, you weren't really eating. And suddenly, the spotlight wasn't bouncing around. It was locked on the Lewis brothers. People around them started whispering that they'd switched up, got a little too comfortable being in charge, maybe even a little too Hollywood. Sharon Bryant? She was stuck right in the middle. She was the one carrying those hits with her voice, but the behind-the-scenes drama was exhausting. Everyone could see she was trying to keep the group from cracking, but it was breaking her too. Eventually, she couldn't fake it anymore. The stress was real, and she didn't even bother hiding how much it messed with her. On top of all the creative tension, people started questioning the money. Like, where exactly was it going? Who was keeping track? Quiet side eyes turned into real suspicion. Nobody was on the same page, and the trust was basically gone. Everything blew up during their next recording session. The group basically split in 2. Sharon Bryant, Clifford Archer, Porter Carroll Jr., William Sutterth III, and Karan Daniels were on one side. Wayne and David Lewis, plus Joe Phillips, were on the other. Guess which side had the contracts, the control, and the name? Sharon's crew tried to stand their ground. They weren't down to keep working unless someone finally addressed the shady management stuff. But they were outnumbered. Their deal needed a 2/3 majority to make real changes, and they didn't have it. So instead of wasting time fighting paperwork, they dipped. One by one, they packed it up. Sharon was out, so was Carroll, Archer, Sutterth, and Daniels. Even their go-to producer called it quits. In what felt like one blink, most of the original group was gone, and the Lewis brothers were left standing, now running the whole thing with full control. To the outside world, it was all packaged nice and clean. Sharon just leaving to do her own thing. But the math didn't lie. 5 people bounced at once. That wasn't some cute career pivot. It was a silent fallout, and it said a lot about how the industry worked. Sharon had ambition, real ambition, but because she was a black woman, That got twisted into being difficult. If a guy had done what she did, they'd have called him a genius and handed him a bigger deal. Instead, her confidence got treated like a threat. That kind of bias didn't just show up in meetings, it played a role in why her chapter with the band ended the way it did. Even with all that, she didn't just vanish. She dropped a solo album and landed a few hits. People were still listening. She had something to say and she said it, but the mainstream never gave her the space she actually earned. And for a long time, the industry just kept doing what it always did, pushing women like her out of their own stories. Sharon was barely out the door before Barbara Weathers walked in, and everything changed.
Well, I was singing at a jazz club in Greensboro, North Carolina. I was a singing waitress. And I was noticed by someone from MCA Records. And they wanted to do.
She brought this cool, clear presence that didn't just slide into place. It redirected the whole group. Suddenly, the sound was softer, slower, and way more intimate. The upbeat funk faded into the background, and out came the slow jams that got them charting harder than ever. They were suddenly everywhere. That one song about sneaking around, instant classic. And the big one that followed, straight up wedding playlist royalty. Barbara's voice was the centerpiece now, not a placeholder. She wasn't continuing what came before, she was rewriting it. But, like clockwork, the chaos came creeping in. Not loud, not public, just enough to make her leave without saying much. Official word was she wanted to go solo, but people close to the group knew better. There were quiet fights about credit, money, direction, and adding fuel to the fire, she was also engaged to Wayne Lewis. That alone probably made rehearsals feel like a minefield. After she left, it was rinse and repeat. New girl, new album, short stay. Portia, then Rachel, then Aisha, all of them talented, all of them temporary. No headlines, no drama splashed across magazines, just slow fade-outs. Meanwhile, the guys, especially the Lewis brothers, never went anywhere. And each time the female lead changed, the group's sound drifted a little more. The songs were still clean, still polished, but the spark was different. The spotlight didn't rotate anymore. It was fixed in place, and the message, even if no one said it out loud, was clear enough. The women were replaceable. The men weren't. By the end of the 80s, Atlantic Starr had already pulled off what most groups couldn't. They dodged a full-blown breakup, flipped their sound, and dropped 2 tracks that basically owned every wedding and radio station. But once the new decade rolled in, the ground started shifting under them, and this time, they weren't steering the change, they were scrambling to stay on the map. That's when New Jack Swing kicked the door in. Loud drums, rap collabs, slick talking, no patience for soft ballads. Acts like Guy and Belle Biv DeVoe were setting the tone, and Atlantic Starr suddenly felt old school. The slow jams, the dreamy harmonies, it all started to sound like background music at your auntie's anniversary dinner. The new crowd wanted bass, bounce, and edge, and the group's emotional love songs just weren't cutting through anymore. Inside the camp, things got shaky. Some folks were itching to try new sounds, chase the wave, shake things up. Others were like, nah, we're not about to lose who we are just to fit in. It was deeper than beats and melodies. This was about what the group stood for, and not everyone saw it the same way. Then came the twist. David Lewis, one of the main voices, the guy behind the guitar and a chunk of the hits, just dipped. Not for a solo deal, not to join another group. He straight up left the whole R&B world and went gospel. Said he wanted more purpose, less applause. That exit said a lot without saying much. The group was split, some leaning into faith, others still chasing that next big hit. They weren't just dealing with changing trends. They were drifting apart. Quietly, from the inside out. That split in direction, it only made everything messier. Then the money problem showed up. People started whispering about weird pay gaps, sketchy management, and missing coins. And once cash drama hits a group that's already torn on where they're headed, it's not just uncomfortable, it's a ticking bomb. Everything behind the scenes started feeling shakier by the day. Still, they kept pushing through the 90s and way past that. They were still dropping albums, switched labels, tried new singers, played around with the sound. There were a few moments that almost felt like the old spark, but almost doesn't fill arenas.